Joining us here on the ESPN Ithaca phone lines, kind enough to take a couple of minutes out of his day, is John Gordon. Obviously, you might know John as a best-selling author and speaker, but of course, he was a former Cornell lacrosse player who played for Richie. And John, thanks so much for the time. We really appreciate it. You know, you tweeted out Sunday night that, you know, Richie changed your life, and I'm wondering if you can give us, you know, the Cliff Notes version, because I'm sure you could go on and on about Richie, but how did he change your life? What made him so impactful?
Well, I could write a book on it for sure. And I know we don't have that time, but here's the deal. I was a kid from Smithtown, Long Island, and I was 17 years old, spoke to him for the first time, and he recruited me to go to Cornell. I was the only person from my family, right, ever go to a Ivy League school. I never thought I'd do a school like that. He believed in me, and I go to Cornell, right out of Long Island. My dad was a New York City police officer. My parents never made more than $30,000 a year. He exposed me to a whole new world. I learned about culture and teamwork and leadership. And this coach, Richie Moran, this legendary coach, believed in me. I remember the first conversation. He had this incredible voice that just resonated with you. It sounded like he was a young, really young guy. And I get up there my recruiting visit, and I'm like, Coach, if I get in, I'm going here. And so I go to Cornell, and I grow in so many ways. I see friends who have successful families and wealth, and you see a whole new world that is possible for you. And then there's the lessons you learn along the way. You're part of the Cornell family, which is a huge part of your life and who you are. And I venture to say I would not be doing what I'm doing today. I've written 26 books. They've sold millions of copies. I've really been able to impact people around the world. It was Richie Moran who really paved the way for me to do that, and I owe him my life.
When did you realize it was more than X's and O's with Richie, and it was about navigating through life with, in some ways, passion and purpose?
That is the crux right there. I was just talking to Mike LaRocca, and Mike and I were talking about how, you know, your 4 years with him were good, right? I was the years where we started to lose, where Richie didn't have his best years. And so we may not have seen the best of Richie like in the 70s and 80s in terms of a coach, but we saw the best in him as a leader and as a person who cared about you. Like, I'm waiting tables after college at Houlihan's restaurant in Long Island, and who walks in but Richie Moran? He tells my manager that he's with the FBI and John Gordon's in big trouble. And he needs to talk to me right now. The manager comes up to me. He's like, "You are in big trouble. The FBI's here." And I go to the front, and there's Richie standing there, right? So he showed up when I was doing that. I then moved to Atlanta. I opened up a bar in Buckhead. Who comes and visits me? Richie visits me in the bar, like early on in my opening of my business. He showed up and said hello. Throughout the years, like, he always showed up. He wasn't just your coach for 4 years. He was your coach for a lifetime. And that's what made him so unique. That's what made him so special. Mike said the same thing. He would go to Mike's practices and be there with them. He would visit my teammates, Mike Levine with CA Sports, you know, and Teddy Berkery and those guys. He would see their families. So he was always involved in our lives. So like when you signed up to go to Cornell and you played for him, it wasn't just the 4 years. You were signing up for forever. And one of our last conversations, you know, he said to me, teammates are forever. And I said, so are coaches like you, Coach, who changed my life forever. And that's what made him so unique. That's what made him so special.
Incredible. John Gordon with us here on BTL. You, of course, know him as a best-selling author and speaker. He, of course, played college lacrosse for the Cornell Big Red under the legendary Richie Moran, who we're remembering all throughout this week here on BTL. You know, you've obviously interacted with so many different people in so many different ways and whatnot, but have you ever met someone who seems so genuine and so authentic as Richie Moran?
No, and I think that's why he is a one-of-a-kind coach. He is once in a lifetime, a generation leader, a person. It's why the Lacrosse Hall of Fame is named after him. It's why he had so much success. It's why all the players throughout the years feel like they're part of one big family, and he was the father of this family that we are now all a part of. He was so genuine. He was so real. And he would tell you like it is, right? He'd give you a hard time. He wanted you to work hard. If you worked hard, he liked your effort and you felt his approval. But at the same time, he would have fun. He would play around. He was always teasing. Practical jokes. I'm sure you know about the legendary practical jokes and, you know, and the bucket of steam that he told people to get when they were freshmen. Hey, kid, we'll get that bucket of steam down at the, down at the equipment room. And so he was always playing jokes, but just real, genuine, likable. And he genuinely, loved people. Like, he loved people. He loved his players. If he met a stranger, like, I know people who have told me stories because they know he was my coach. I'm out on the road speaking all over. They come up to me, hey, I met Richie at camp and this is what he did. I met him at this clinic and this is what he did. There are all these amazing stories of Richie interacting with people that weren't his players, but he was just so real, funny, and just truly genuine.
You mentioned how you saw him fairly recently, I guess you could say. Could you kind of go a little bit deeper into that and in that interaction and in the last time you saw Richie?
Talk about showing up. It was a few years ago before COVID hit, and I had an event in Marco Island. I was speaking at an education conference to a lot of principals and educators, and he was there, and he came to visit, came to see me speak. So here we are years later. He was probably around 81, 82, 49 years old. And here he is coming to see me speak at this event. One of the special moments of my life. My parents have, passed away. I'm like getting tearful right now. My parents passed away, both of them. And then to have Coach there was like having my family there. And I got a chance to honor him and tell the audience who he was and the difference he made in my life. He stood up. I still have video of it. The crowd cheered for him. And it was a really special moment to just share how a coach, a teacher, has such an impact in your life. Billy Graham said, a coach will have more impact in a year than most people do in a lifetime. And that is true. Coach had an impact, not just in 4 years, but also in our lifetimes. And that's what, again, was so amazing about him. He always showed up. And that's what was so special about him. And everyone talks about it. Like, I've talked to 10, 20 teammates already, and they just talk about how he was there for us in the course of our lives. And I think that's what's unique. Like, that's what I want to write about in the future. I want to talk about, Coach Moran, not just the 4 years, but this guy that always was involved in your life, because that is so rare that a coach cares more about you after you're done playing.
That's for sure. John Gordon with us here on BTL. We're looking back and remembering the life and legacy of former Cornell Lacrosse head coach Richie Moran. You've been around, I'm sure, a lot of leaders in pro sports for a lot of your life, being involved with, MLB teams and NBA teams and NFL teams and college programs and so on and so forth. But I'm wondering if there are any lessons that you learned from Richie that you've tried to instill onto these teams or organizations that, you've spoken to and everything.
There's a lot of stories to tell besides, the one we just talked about, how he impacts you throughout your entire life. Like, that's special. Coaches need to hear that. Why do you coach? Is it for the win, or is it for the impact that you're going to have on their lives? Why do you coach? Sean McVay I worked with since he got the coaching job with the Rams, right? This is a coach who is so young and yet gets it and is so impactful and is always about relationships. So he gets it. But for Richie Moran, there's a story. I was a freshman. After fall ball, I walked into his office. I said, Coach, I know I'm not playing well, Coach, but I'm going to start playing better. I'm just trying to figure it all out. I'm struggling, but Coach, I'm going to get it together. And he went, hey, kid, just stop. Just stop. He walked me towards the door, and he said, hey, kid, we don't talk this game. We play it. So do it on the field. And then he sort of like said goodbye. He's like, go. And I left, and I was like, oh, he doesn't care about me. He wasn't even taking the time to listen to me. And I said, that's it. I'm going to show him, though. So after my pity party, I decided to show him. And he taught me that the talkers talk and the doers do. And it was about doing. And yes, he loved you, but you had to go out there and be a doer and work hard and get results. And great coaches bring out the greatness in you. And to be great, you got to be willing to be great, willing to listen to feedback, and willing to get better. And Coach did that for me in one of those moments. He also, as I got older, right, then he respected you more. He would ask you questions and listen, and we would even, argue occasionally. But he also always said, which I love, he'd say, hey kid, get to church, kid, get to church. He'd always tell me to go to church. And I would say, Coach, I'm Jewish. Like, when do you think go to church? He's like, hey, he goes, it'd be good for you. It'd be good for you. And the funniest thing is, I am now a follower of Jesus. Like, Jesus changed my life in so many ways. At 35 years old, had a huge impact on me. And I was like, I think Coach was right trying to get me to go to church. Now I go to church all the time.
I love it. John Gordon with us here on BTL. We're remembering the life of the legendary and the late Cornell Big Red Lacrosse head coach Richie Moran. You bring up some of these stories. Do you have any more? Because, that's a heck of a story. The FBI bit is a heck of a thing. Is there any good prankster sort of stories you got of Richie?
Oh my goodness. There are many more. Some I'm not sure I can tell. But there are so many great ones. There were just ones that he called up. He said he was the president of the United States and had my assistant going with that. And like, the president is really calling you. And this was like years ago. And he was able to just convince her. It was hilarious. So just different things like that. Always playing practical jokes. The FBI story is definitely a keeper though.
It's very
and then
good.
Definitely, when I opened the restaurant, he came to see me. I'm trying to remember, but yeah, he definitely was playing jokes on my employees, before I knew that he was there.
John, before we let you run, I'm wondering if you could kind of, in some ways summarize what you feel like the legacy Richie has left on the Cornell lacrosse community.
If I had to define it in one word, it would be family. Like, he built a family. And as a parent, I have kids, they're a reflection of me. And the essence that myself and my wife bring to them, the love that we give and who we are reflects on them. And I would say family, the Cornell family, we are who we are because of Coach Moran, because of his love, because of his genuineness, because of his belief, because of his jokes, because of his constant being there in our lives. We're all better men, because of him. He made us better. And one of my teammates, said, man, I probably should have been kicked out of school several times, based on my grades and everything else. And Richie just kept pushing for me to do better. He kept like, please, come on, you got this. He pulled out the greatness in him and wouldn't let him fail where other coaches perhaps would have. And he just believed in him so much, he kept on going. And so I think that we are a family. Yes, there's always fighting in families. Sometimes there's dysfunction in families. No family's perfect, right? But at the end of the day, we are a family, and we are a reflection of Coach Moran and all that he put into us. And we are who we are because of him.
So well said. Hey, John, we really appreciate the time. It's obviously such a big loss for the Cornell athletics community and for the Ithaca community, but we really appreciate a couple of minutes to look back at the great one that was Richie Moran. Thanks so much for stopping by. Be well, and thanks again, okay?
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Mike Levine told me to give him a shout a few weeks ago, and I'll always be thankful that he did. I reached out to him, and we had one last conversation, and he asked me to just put his book out there. Hey, John, can you tell people about my book? I got about a few hundred copies here. I want to sign them, and I want people to have them, especially young people out there that can benefit from my life and story, the book he wrote with Steve Lawrence. And I want people to read that book. There are a bunch of books still out there that have been printed, and my hope is that people will read that book. I put it out on social media. I talked about it, and I had a lot of people get that book. And one woman in particular she tweeted out that Richie signed her book just a week ago, and she has that signed book from Richie. I think that's really special, and I want to thank Mike for encouraging me to call him, and I'm just thankful for all the people who support his book and his life.
That's remarkable. Absolutely love it. John, thanks so much. Really appreciate it again.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.